Flub.
Go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You're all in your homes. We're so grateful that you're logging in today. And most important, I really hope all of you are staying healthy. One of the things we thought as a staff, one way that we could keep connected with all of you, our precious members, is to offer a series of conversations with museum staff, which we're going to be doing over the course of the next month or so, possibly 2 months or so. And we're really delighted today to begin our series with Amanda Solomon, our manager of Museum and Holocaust Education. Amanda's going to speak for a few minutes about the work that she and her team are doing to stay connected to teachers and students across the state and Southwest Washington. If you have questions, Amanda's going to be thrilled to answer them for you. If you're new to Zoom, you're going to see in your bottom screen a Q&A feature. Just click on that. You can put your question there. And then Gail Mandel is going to moderate the questions afterwards. We anticipate the program to take somewhere between 30 and 35 minutes. So thank you, Amanda, for joining us today. And I'm going to hand the program to her.
All right. So hi, everyone. Really excited to virtually see everybody. I'm really excited to share what our education team has been up to. But before I begin, I want to give a shout out to all of our docents who have been just really caring with and helpful with just understanding the situation that we're in now. We're all kind of looking forward to getting back to the museum in whatever capacity that may be. And I will throw out there that if any of our members are interested in becoming a docent, to please put in an application. That information will be available online shortly. But again, just to give you an overview of what we've been doing, I almost feel like we have been busier offline now, just kind of helping support teachers and prepare them for remote learning. I'm not sure how many of you know, but this spring was slated to be our busiest spring with field trips. We had, I want to say, 12 or 15 days left open through the end of the school year. So we were really, really sad that we couldn't go through with that. But I have reached out to a lot of those organizers to create virtual programs, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. With the shift into remote learning, at the beginning it was a little bit up in the air, like, how are we all going to transition into this? What about equity issues? What about timing? There were so many issues to really consider. And so what we decided to do as a museum was create themed content, or rather curate themed content. Knowing that creating quality content takes a lot of time, we decided to do a lot of the legwork for teachers and go and scour the internet for all of these different resources about what's already amazing that's out there. So some of the themes that we started out with were virtual tours, looking at diaries, how do we document what's going on? And given that the history that we discuss at the museum is often really difficult and sad, how do we help teachers and students process these emotions and think about a way to live through this time? So we focused on art in response to loss, hardship, and oppression. We looked at scapegoating throughout the past 100 years to see how different instances, how different parts of history and different people in history have been scapegoated for various events. And I can tell you, we spoke with our student educators earlier this week, and they did that lesson in their class, and they loved it. So that was really, really great feedback for us to hear. I can share just a little bit else, or I can also share some other feedback that we've gotten from teachers about these guides that we've been creating. They go out every Friday, and you can find all of them on our website. If you go under the education tab, there's you can click a link for remote learning resources, and you can see the list of everything that we've created throughout the weeks. So one of the teachers from St. Mary's Academy sent me an email one day that said, "Your game is on point. Thank you for your amazing resources." And then another teacher from Holy Redeemer has said that she's been using our lessons to create essential questions and weekly objectives, and that all of the materials that we have been provided are very engaging. She loves that we're doing the hard work of kind of combing through the internet. And she likes that all of the materials that we are providing are really tangible and relevant for this moment in time. So those are just two pieces of feedback that we got about our educator forums. We've also been transitioning to virtual programs for not only teachers who are missing field trips, but as a way to connect with educators in a new way, a way that might be the future. So some of the things that we've been doing there is recorded conversations. So we were having a teacher who I met at a conference in December. It was his first time going to come to the museum with his students. It was going to be at the end of their unit. So I called him and I said, "How can we make this work?" And it was interesting. When I was on the phone with him, he was really struggling to see how this virtual program was going to be effective and successful for his students. His students do not meet online together. It's very hit or miss whether they do show up at all online. So how to make that authentic and engaging. And what we ended up coming with is his students had created questions that they wanted answered throughout their study of the Holocaust, and they were going to bring those to the museum and afterwards answer those questions as their final project. So what I ended up doing with him is I had his students send those questions to him, he sent them to me, and we recorded a 50-minute conversation between me and him answering those questions. And afterwards, when I was talking to him, he was like, "This was the highlight of my day. It was so nice to get to speak to you again. And I'm really excited for my students to like understand the complexity of the Holocaust, even though they couldn't go to the museum." So that was really, really rewarding, and one way that we're trying to keep in touch with teachers who don't meet with their students live. The second thing, I did have another teacher reach out to me. She was so excited to bring her students for our Southern Rights exhibition. And so one of the things that we're working on right now is making a recorded presentation that I can send out to teachers who are supposed to come and see that exhibition. It's, for those of you who have seen it, it is a really fabulous exhibition, and it's also so thought-provoking. So we're working really hard to create that recording so that students can leave with still some of the same questions that we hope that they do when they see those photos in person. I'm also offering an optional live or recorded question and answer session for teachers who have students view that recording. So hopefully it's still a way that we can engage with students, even if it's a back and forth via a recording. I'm also doing live presentations. So I just had one yesterday with a 7th grade class where I went over the Holocaust and our discrimination and resistance exhibitions, and they loved it. It was a different way of learning, but given the circumstances, they were excited to see somebody and get to ask questions via the chat, and just be able to connect with somebody that's not in their classroom or in their immediate houses, I guess. I'm also doing a workshop, St. Mary's Academy. They have their annual Unite Day, which we love to be a part of, which unfortunately had to be canceled. So they're doing something where they have workshop and wellness Wednesdays. So some of our student educators had reached out to us and said, "Hey, this is what we're doing, and we would love for you to do a presentation." I reached out, and St. Mary's was like, "Of course." So in May, I will be doing our A is for Activism workshop during one of their workshop Wednesdays. So really excited to, again, do a live presentation for schools that have that option available to them. We're also doing special pre-recorded programs. Cottonwood School of Science and Civics was supposed to come to their museum. They have third graders create a museum exhibition every year. So their third graders come to the museum to learn about how do you make a museum, what goes into it. And so we'll be doing a recording. I'll be going back down to the museum, even though it's empty, and doing a recording for the third graders about what goes into making a good museum exhibition. And then I'll be sending it to them, and then they'll show us how they created their exhibitions at home. We are working, I'm very, very excited that we are working on a virtual tour of the memorial. So that is something that we are in the process of developing. And given that we don't know what next school year will look like, we are hoping that this resource will be something that teachers can look forward to in case they are unable to take a field trip to us next year, or it's more difficult to take a field trip. We've also extended into webinars, kind of like the format that we are seeing right now. So we've done 2 so far. They've been, both of them, based off of the educator guides that we've been sending out weekly. And some of the feedback that we got, we actually had somebody from the Parks Department show up to one, and she, in her survey back to us, she really liked the way that we asked questions and explored this gray area. So she's really interested in seeing how she can look at the gray within parks and nature. And so one of the examples that she brought up was how people have to drive to go to the parks, which is kind of counterintuitive to supporting nature. So looking at that gray area of how do we sit with that? We had another teacher who said that she is using some of our resources for now, but is also looking to work on next year's lessons, and is definitely going to incorporate much of what we had discussed. One of the biggest feedbacks that we've gotten, or not biggest, but one of the most consistent feedbacks that we've gotten is that our resources are really easy to implement. And as an educator during this time, that is one of the best compliments I think I can receive, because I know teachers are overwhelmed just like everybody else, but I know teachers especially are overwhelmed during this time trying to figure out how to suddenly shift into this new learning environment. And the fact that our resources are not more work for them in the end is really, really gratifying to hear. So we did have a couple of professional developments planned. I was actually planning on doing some in April, May, June, July, and August. And I've been in contacts with the people who I was supposed to do them with about how do we transition that for next year to do a combination of online virtual professional development, but also maybe doing half in person. So this webinar feature, I think, is really going to help us reach teachers beyond the Portland metro area. We had a teacher from Washington, D.C. come to our webinar last week, so that was really, really exciting for us. And speaking about preparing for next year, we do want to be prepared for whatever the world brings us. So we are going to be convening a summer teacher advisory board for teachers to help us develop remote learning resources and virtual programs for, again, for whatever that may look like. We want to be prepared to best meet the needs of educators wherever they are at or whatever the circumstances are at. So we're taking a very proactive approach to doing that. We've also met with our student educator interns. So I'm not sure how many of you have been to the museum on the weekends, but we had a new program this year where we had high schoolers be in the exhibitions on the weekends to help guide people throughout. And we had our final meeting with them to kind of recap how the experience was, what did they want. a majority of them really, really enjoyed coming to the museum on weekends and wanted to continue to do so when we reopen. So that was really, really great to hear. And we also threw out to them this idea of a student ed advisory board, where 10th and 11th grade students would meet with us monthly via Zoom to help us figure out how to engage youth, whether that be through programs or whether that be through the workshops that we create for school trips. All of them were very excited about that. And one of them said, "Can I be on both of these, or do I have to choose one?" So we're really excited about looking at that opportunity to engage more youth in what we're doing. We did have our final teacher advisory board meeting, so we did have that this year. And as you all know, hopefully, starting in September, due to Senate Bill 664, all public schools in Oregon are required to teach about the Holocaust and other genocides. Our teacher advisory board this year worked really, really hard to create essential questions to help teachers or to guide teachers in how to navigate this really, really hard history. So we finished that last week. We have shared it with the Department of Ed, who we work very, very closely with. So those will be available to teachers starting in the fall. And finally, just to wrap up before we have Gail ask me the questions that you want to know the answers to. It took a lot of brainstorming to figure out how to make our annual art and writing competition continue. And I am so thrilled to say that we are receiving submissions for both art and writing. Students can either mail in their entries or email their writing entries, and all art entries are going to be uploaded to Dropbox. So no art entries are going to be judged in their 2D or 3D format. And although it's a change, we're really hoping that, again, students beyond the Portland metro area will have an opportunity to submit. Because if you lived 5 hours away in Eastern Oregon, mailing your entry to the museum was a really big challenge and obstacle. So we're hoping that shifting it this year, that we'll get more entries from students outside of the Portland metro area. And just to reiterate, our writing submissions are due May 15th, and our art submissions are due May 30th. We have the two separate dates because we didn't know what to do with art right away, and we came out with what to do later on. So we have two separate deadlines for that. Other than that, I feel like I need to sometimes take a deep breath and be like, wow, we've done a lot. So schools end the beginning of June. So we're going to push through this May and help and support as many educators as possible. But if you have any questions, comments, recommendations about what we should do, I'm always here to listen. And I'm here to answer your questions now. What else do you want to know about what we've been doing? So Gail, I don't know if there's any questions that have come in, but I'm here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Amanda. Yes, we do have a couple of questions. The first is, are there any advantages to virtual teaching that you hadn't anticipated?
I'd say yes, but I think right now we're in a crisis mode, and not just we, but I mean all teachers. So with this really quick transition, a lot of people are scrambling of, how do I make this work right now? So I think right now it's really about putting out fires and helping people transition in the moment. But I think unexpectedly, all of these virtual programs are going to allow us to reach so many more students and educators who are unable to make it into Portland for a trip. So I think that's something that we've been wanting to do for quite some time. So to be able to really focus on virtual programs and put that as our spotlight for the summer is really a blessing in disguise. I hope that answers the question.
No, that did. No, thank you. And then one more question for you. Oh, okay, we just got another one too. How do you make your virtual teaching interactive?
So a couple of different ways. If depending on the class size, so yesterday's class was a class of 7 students. So I didn't do a Zoom webinar, I did a Zoom meeting. So I could see all of their faces and I shared my screen. And just like I ask at the beginning of every tour, why do we study the Holocaust? I asked the students, why do we study? And so they were able to tell me their responses with their voices or use their chat if they wanted to. With a webinar format like this, because I can't see everybody's faces, I'll often use the chat feature. So I will wait for a question, or I won't wait for a question, I will ask a question, and then I'll wait for answers to come in on the chat. Or there's also a polling feature on here, so I can poll people to see where they are. But if I can't do live learning with students, which seems to be the biggest challenge at the moment, and that will change next year depending on what learning looks like. Right now, students are in their own homes. We need to be prepared next year for what happens if schools are back in session. And so teachers are with their students in the classroom, but are unable to go on a field trip. So that's a different type of virtual program where me or anybody on our team can interact with the classroom because they're all together. So I can ask questions that way. It's very different when everybody is in their own home. So if students are not able to do a live session, that's where the teacher really becomes this important middle player that can share the information with their students, gather the questions so that they still feel that their voices are valued and being heard, bring them back to me, and then I can answer them. So it's a little bit of this elongated process of interaction, but still having this option for question and answer recorded sessions, I find to be really, really valuable because students feel like their voices are heard, their personal questions are being answered, and it's not just me talking at a screen for no one or for everyone, which can feel very impersonal sometimes. So that's a variety of kind of what we're looking at.
Okay, no, thank you. One more question. Have you thought about doing any similar programming for adults?
Oh, I'm going to say yes, but. Yes, but I think at this moment in time, through the end of the school year, our focus needs to remain on school educators. So over the summer, when we'll have a little bit more time to sit and reflect on what worked with our virtual programs, what didn't work with them, how do we want to move forward, what other avenues do we want to explore, what other areas of content do we want to focus on. Right now, we haven't created much material. We haven't created much material that is, that has to do with our specific museum and Oregon's history. And so that's something that if we're gonna, if we're going to explore and expand to make available to adults, I would wanna make sure that it is quality programming. And that's something that we can focus on for the spring and the summer and the fall. But if you have suggestions on what adults are looking for within our systems, please feel free to email me. I want to hear from you. But again, right now our focus through the end of May is to help teachers get through this really difficult time.
Okay. I know I said one more, but I wasn't being truthful. Now I have another question for you.
They can keep coming in, that's fine.
Okay. What role do you see for docents in this new way of developing and sharing learning materials?
Oh, great question. And Lynn, if that came from you, that's a good one. So I've talked to Judy, and it's something that I will discuss with my education committee next week. But I can see ourselves, once we figure out what our virtual programs look like, training docents to be virtual educators. And again, this is a way that we can not only reach schools who are unable to come to the museum, but schools that were never going to come to the museum because of boundaries, such as distance. So it's a really good opportunity. All of these challenges that are put in our way are a really good opportunity for us to grow. So if you feel like you're really good being on screen and connecting with people, even though you might not see them, and that's a docent experience that you'd like to try out, again, apply to be a docent. Our docent program will be evolving based off of this circumstance. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And it's something that we're just going to have to trial and error.
Okay. One more, and I think that we'll then wrap things up. I think that you can probably answer this one pretty quickly. Could you just recap quickly what grade levels you have already been reaching through your virtual teaching?
Well, that's actually much harder. It's not a simple question. I'm going to say we've been reaching pre-K through university. So right now our materials are really focused on 6 through 12, but we have been expanding into upper elementary. So especially with the art in response to loss, hardship, and oppression, we really thought about activities that teachers or parents could do with their children at home to process or document what's going on in their lives right now. And that was really, really accessible for K through 5. Part of our summer teacher advisory board is to specifically convene a group of K-5 educators to help us discuss how can we reach out to those teachers as well and support them. So again, this is something that we've been wanting to do. And this is just providing us the opportunity and impetus to do it.
Gail, that's it. No more questions?
Nope, that is it. Thank you, Amanda.
Amanda,
No problem. I was
thank
glad I was
you.
able to answer them.
Amanda, thank you. I hope everybody appreciated, as I appreciated, hearing about the fabulous work of Amanda and her amazing education team. It's really gratifying to know that even in the most arduous of circumstances, we can be nimble and do the work we need to do. So thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. I'm just going to quickly say 2 things you might not know about. On our website, you'll see, I don't even know where it is, but we do have a hotline, and maybe we'll put it out in our next e-blast, which is going out tomorrow. But we're trying to collect your stories about what you're going through during this pandemic. And we have a phone number, and you just call the number, and it's going to take you through a number of prompts, allowing you just to tell us a little bit about what you've been going through. And we're going to be capturing this for our oral history. That's a good segue into our next coffee and conversation. Will be with Alicia, our archivist. We haven't quite set the date, but it'll be probably week after next. So follow our e-blasts and we'll let you know. And thank you everyone for joining. You can always contact us. I know Amanda would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. All of us would love to hear from you. Our contact information is all on our website if you don't have our e-blast. So thank you. Take care. Stay healthy. Be hopeful. Bye.